Homies, homies, homies. It's time to take a look at Raenarill versus This Is Jimmy. It's a rematch of the Faction Wars group, the Group C undercard of March Invitational 2025, and I want to see what ends up happening here on Near Impact. One thing about this that is not true of the original group, however, is that this is competitive as opposed to Faction Wars, which is interesting, because I kind of thought that, Raenarill would just occasionally participate in, the tournament stuff for whatever reason. As far as oh yeah, sure, I'll play in the tournament. Maybe I'll play an FFA, but definitely a 1v1, a couple 1v1s or whatever. And then the idea would be that, okay, from there, Raenarill will be gaming. Raenarill will be, going back to weekend wars and FFAs and team games only. But now Raenarill seems to be enjoying playing 1v1s. So I don't know what's happening. Maybe they can go ahead and drop a comment when they're... when they watch this video. I also just want to wear shoes, dude. We got Raenarill as a Dark Sapphire Terran in the top left. He's actually going to go opening with Mech. Jimmy's got a very fast stockade comparatively, so we are going to see him as the dim gray Terran in the bottom right. And with all of that said, it looks to me like this will be Mech versus Bio. So I do like when the mirrors go a little asymmetric. And, it's a debuff on his move speed. Snow is definitely like that. So this is, of course, Near Impact, a map by Jujic. The only real updates to this map that are pending at this point are because that we've got these doodad sprites that are scattered in a few different places, I think. I don't know, I thought there were some over here. Anyway, at some point there are going to be some doodad sprites, and they just need to be recolored, repaletted, so to speak, so I got to do that later. Pre-stimming the Maverick is pretty big there. Jimmy has not actually sent a scout. I can't use my thumb. Oh, yeah, Jimmy has a cut on his hand or something, so he's been owned. But he pre-stimmed his Maverick to get it across the map and also to kill the scout of Raenarill. So all Raenarill will know is that there was a Bio opener. But usually, the thing is, I think Bio is the most flexible opener for Terran in any matchup. The question is whether or not you actually want what it provides you in the very early stages of the game. Usually, you're not just sticking on one stockade, right? The Bio structure. Usually, when you go Bio, your thought is, I'm going to follow it up with, a star pad. Maybe in some very, very niche circumstances, you might follow it up with a, some kind of... very, very fast ministry or something if you want to try to expand. But I think I've only ever seen one Fulk expand if you're going mech. That happens in TVP sometimes. Interesting little eco build that helps the Terran scale a little bit in the earlier stages instead of going all in on military pressure. Forces the Protoss to respond a little bit of a different way. But anyway, in Terran Mirror, especially, I think Starpad is probably going to be a sleeper hit. You don't spend your Vespene as much when you go Bio because you're making things like Hurricanes and Mavericks, which are mineral only. And so you can bank all of your Vespene and use it for that. You can also, of course, go for a Covenant add-on and get some Savants or Eidolons out early on. And, it makes a lot of sense. Are you Luke, by the way? Okay. I don't know what that's about. Oh. Yeah, me too. Raenarill gonna go ahead and put his ministry down. And, yeah. With all that stuff said, we have the star pad coming up here. Jimmy's obviously typing. Nice to meet you. Yeah, it's true. And he's gonna go ahead and make an Anseal. Okay, so... I guess that means that Jimmy's name must be Jimmy, right? Because clearly, what else would you get when you search "This is Jimmy"? Google would just say, "Yes, this is Jimmy." I don't know if you need my name. It's Jimmy, dude. What the hell are you talking about? Look at this goober. Doesn't even know his own name. All right. The Fulcrum is on the way here for Jimmy. He's probably going to go ahead and drop a Palladium if I had to speculate, right? So that might be a factor there. 8 Vultures on the way. Oh my god, Jimmy's name is Anton. That must be his middle name or something. And I think the Mavericks will be more than enough to hold this Vulture push. And all he needs to do is drop the mines and fall back. And, the Anseal here for the minefield is definitely going to help out. Good play from Raenarill to not end up losing any of those Vultures. More decisive stim might have allowed Jimmy to carve 1 or 2 away. But the minefield here is just going to slow him down. Obviously, you can scan it with the Anseal pretty easily, so no worries there. Already going into our first Palladium here on this side of the aisle. Raenarill adding a 3rd Fulcrum. He's been producing off of, no add-on, which I guess the idea is that he wants to bank up so that he could eventually drop a Ministry, which he has done, and it is now complete. One thing that players should try to do a little bit more often when they can, and right now Raenarill just has, like, he's probably just rallying fresh masons out, it looks like, yep. But when you're at 14 workers here, you can transfer excess workers from, anything above 14 to this mineral field, not counting the Vespian, of course. You count the Vespian separately, and that will allow you to get some pretty good value for your immediate expansion. That's your way of saturating. So worker count a little bit low for both of our players, to be honest, compared to what you would normally have at this time. And by a little bit, I do just mean a little bit. It's probably only about like 3 or 4 off for Raenarill. But he does have that ministry up, so he will be able to try to catch back up. 4th Fulcrum on the way, and he's just using one add-on there so far, making his phalanxes. Actually, both players going for it, so that's kind of interesting. I've long been told that in TVT by Dog and Aud, that they just play it out, and they constantly end up needing to go for phalanxes, just like in TVT and StarCraft 1. Goliaths have arrived to clear that Wraith, so that's not going to be too useful there for Jimmy, but he gets a good scout off. When you're scouting this many production structures, and of course the fact that he's got the expansion, you either need to try to hit before the, very amusing that the Ancil gets stunned there, by the way, but you either need to hit before this production comes online and their expansion gets up. You need to go for a very decisive attack, or, and I would say that this is probably true for Jimmy's case right now, because I don't think his military is strong enough to pull an attack like that off, you need to be going out and taking some map control so you can take a faster 3rd base, and probably also go for a faster tier 2 than them. But try to be defensive about it, try to be intelligent about it, otherwise you will potentially be overwhelmed there. So, just sort of thinking about it from that perspective, it definitely makes a lot of sense that Raenarill is now moving out to the middle of the map, taking it as a little bit of an outpost. He has his Goliaths on standby if the Wraiths try to heckle these phalanxes. He's even got 4 of them here at this point, so that's a very good amount of anti-air. He can also bring down the Ancil very, very targeted. It's a thing we don't really see too often in TVT. I feel like when one player has Ancils, the other player usually doesn't have Goliaths. I don't know why that is. That's just like I feel like that's just not a particular matchup I've seen too often. But Goliaths can perhaps predictably bring Ancils down quite easily. So it looks like Jimmy's just going to recover back at his natural. He's adding a 2nd star pad. Of course, Raenarill adding his 1st. No saturation yet on this natural for Jimmy, so he's a little bit behind economically, even though he's got pretty much the same worker count, which is a credit to him for constantly being up on that worker production. So now we're getting some watchdogs here for anti-Wraith, anti-drop, that sort of thing. Obviously, it's not going to protect the main base itself, but there's units near the rally. There's a Goliath and that anchor. The anchor, I've seen Raenarill build the anchor a lot in pretty much all of his matchups. That might be like a versus AI thing, right? Or a team game thing. In 1v1, I don't think that anchors are as useful, but it's also not really mapped out that much. And to his credit, I'm sure he's played against some underclass players where that has actually been a key detail there. So considering Jimmy is playing with a wounded thumb, this is actually going pretty well for him. I don't hate the idea of spreading out some of his bio so he can maybe collapse on an incoming push if Raenarill is careless enough to do it. But you obviously have to run the risk of then like the mech noticing and just being like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna just pick off your units. So far, no casualties on Raenarill's side, but that can change in a heartbeat. There you go, 1 vulture going down. I'm not sure about the vulture status here. It doesn't look like... Oh, there are some with mines, so those could be replaced at some point, but away from the phalanx position. Jimmy has enough to go ahead and drop his tier 2. Raenarill has kind of fallen quiet on the production tab. He's got over 1,000 minerals right now, and he's working his way up to try to do something more aggressive. He's actually going to deploy those phalanxes. That's a bit of a mistake because they lose their armor. Snack time. Jimmy typing while he attempts to kill those phalanxes. It doesn't look like he'll actually be successful in killing a second one, so I guess the snack was really for Raenarill. But he is keeping his opponent engaged. Oh, the bio is going to get creamed here if it tries to step a little bit further. It's a nice pullback there from our underclassman. Going to go ahead and deploy a 4th phalanx. The siege count definitely favoring Jimmy right now, especially since he's got that closer reinforcement point. Same add-on amount for both players, it looks like. The phalanx feels like it's lingering a little bit too far, but he's actually going to hit a fadeaway shot before deploying, and maybe that'll alert Raenarill to the position. Only now confirming nothing at 3 o'clock, so that's fine. Definitely something that you want to try to do a little bit more proactively. You can see here, Raenarill's Ancil is staring down Jimmy's Ancil. Both players have a lot of money in the bank. It's kind of like an astounding amount of money. In fact, I almost wonder if maybe we have found ourselves in a silly position where, like, the replay version isn't right, because, I did I did update pre-release at one point. Maybe this is on pre-release. But that being said, the production tabs have started to come back online. So maybe it was just a momentary lapse in macro that made me paranoid about replay versions and all that stuff. When people don't put the replay version in the name of the file, I do sometimes forget to take notes as to what exactly it was. But I will actually go ahead and take a look. Yeah, it was on this version, so it's all fine. It's all good. Players are just a bit silly. Third base on the way here for Raenarill. Where is he building that ministry? Okay, over here. He's going to lift it off to that, I guess you could call it the 11 o'clock. Nothing like it on the way for Jimmy as we canvas his base. He's adding a 4th stockade. Man, he could go for tier 2. He just hasn't done that, hasn't pulled the trigger. Going to go ahead and put a sieve up. He's not harvesting from the geyser in here, though, so it's a little bit silly. At some point, the scale of the operation does eventually get to a point where it's like, oh man, I really need to practice, you know, drilling everything and making sure that I'm still making workers. Both players have they've hand shook at like not making workers anymore at the same time, even though they could definitely be useful in this position. Raenarill just about ready for tier 2 as he pulls most of his army away. The phalanxes have been found. No, don't deploy them. When you deploy them, they lose the armor. Now at the same time, a couple of phalanxes over here are going to catch Raenarill's cycle back. The Wraiths once again paying out dividends as the Goliaths attempt to contend with the bio. They probably could do it, by the way, but want to fall back to a more cost-efficient position with the phalanxes of their own. Very, very good artillery shots, absolutely destroying these Goliaths right now. That definitely changes the math in a big way. So that was pretty catastrophic for Raenarill's army, right? And back at home, he's got a ridiculous amount of money and needs to actually put some stuff down. Still no tier 2 for either player, and of course, there it is. Okay, Raenarill has answered the call. The Ministry-making Mason has pivoted over to the next most important structure, the Atlas. So that'll unlock a whole swath of new tech for our Dark Sapphire Terran. Meanwhile, we got many Wraiths being remade here by Jimmy. That's what that second star pad was for. I've seen, you know, Ramen and to a lesser extent Shambler pull a second star pad just to mass produce ant seals. Unfortunately for Raenarill, he did not put his Goliaths on hold position here, so they will end up taking some casualties. Jimmy's own force got aggroed there a little bit as well, but not to the same degree of effort. I love the ant seal preemptively placed here. Like, it's expensive and you would want it with your army, but if you're expecting the run by of Wraiths, the flyby, so to speak, you can absolutely go ahead and do that. So only one of them is going to end up making it past here. It'll fly over and probably end up getting slapped there. You can see it is indeed attempting to not die, but it does die. There's too many watchdogs. One of them ends up getting airlifted, and then it's going to go ahead and be deployed somewhere else. There's the Atlas. I don't know what that was before. It might have been like a stockade or something by mistake. But either way, the Atlas is on the way here for Jimmy. He's putting a Ministry down on location, which could very easily be harassed by some vultures, but pretty low amount right now for Raenarill. I guess he wants to hold on to them for now. The Atlas is complete for him. So what is he going to pivot into now? It will be Mantle. So it looks like he wants to grab some walkers. Everybody is a fan of the Cataphract. I secondarily very much appreciate the Durandal and the Ramses. Ooh, got to be careful there, Jimmy. Your ant seal almost got popped. And yeah, Raenarill needs to actually pull those Goliaths much further away. They are very much in the crossfires of these phalanxes. As soon as they get vision, there you go. Shellacking a few more Goliaths. The phalanxes themselves have been unsieged for Raenarill. He wants to go ahead and deploy them in a better position so he can actually range down some of this army, but he didn't force target the enemy phalanx, and so he's going to splatter a lot of the bio, which on surface might look pretty good, but he needs to get rid of this artillery that Jimmy is using, otherwise his own Goliaths are going to be for naught. That being said, at this point, he has broken that forward phalanx, and now he's got to fight into a concave of them if he wants to. Jimmy going for the air solution to that problem is definitely very good. You can see he's making a little bit of everything, just having units producing everywhere. But we have 2 Cataphracts coming for Raenarill. Maybe that's going to be the answer for everything he has to fight, is Cataphract Goliath. I make 1 of every unit. You make 2 Cataphracts. Shit, I'm losing. So right about now, we have a starport coming for Jimmy, as well as, of course, a captaincy. So he's leveraging his tier 2 very, very fast as well. Even though, of course, he had the resources to do it a lot sooner than Raenarill did. Oh, the shellacking of those Goliaths is really starting to become a storyline of this game. But the Wraiths can't cycle back in, and I don't know that you want to be using them there. The ant seal's protecting the phalanxes so nicely. I don't think they're going to get a single pick there. Yeah, that was unfortunate. They do end up wounding them, like that does kind of matter. Because Phalanxes have a hit scan projectile. Tank mode Phalanx is actually better than siege mode Phalanx for breaking entrenched positions, as long as they're not a bunch of mines in the way. And or you can like clear them with like Anseal detecting them while your Phalanxes are in the artillery mode. That kind of thing. So I just think, like, mathematically speaking, if Jimmy were to unpack these Phalanxes and dive in, he would dodge that first shot if he moved past it, and then he would start picking off individual Phalanxes, and pretty soon he'd be within the minimum attack range. So those are just some of my thoughts there. As the Starport gets a rotary, he's going to go ahead and drop a second one. Looks like he wants to give Sundogs another try. We saw him do that versus Blade Hollow somewhat recently, and almost pull victory from the jaws of defeat. Maybe I'm overselling it a little bit, but it was pretty interesting, and certainly an entertaining match for me to look at. Decently saturated third base, but Raenarill could use some more workers. Jimmy, on the other hand, well, he could also use some more workers, but he's got more workers than his opponent. And they have taken the same bases in terms of the map symmetry. So this base has a lot more minerals, whereas the 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions have a lot more gas on account of them having the double geysers. So especially on tier 2, you can exploit that a lot more. With regards to using your reservoirs there. And Jimmy's also taking another base in the forward position, the upside down smiley face, interior 6 as I like to call it, or inner 6 maybe. All right, the Phalanxes are unpacking, the Cataphracts are here, we got 2 Anseals to try to protect them a little bit as they move forward and try to find a good position. Just to preview the range, they are in fact able to kill these 2, and probably some of these Phalanxes can fire back. But look at that! Charging forward with the Walkers is actually going to prove pretty useful there as multiple Phalanxes go down on the right. All right, well, the Mavericks are going to try to dive forward. The Cataphract has been brought down. There's only 1 remaining, but that Phalanx stack is almost impenetrable. 2 more Phalanxes arrive. Jimmy's rally ends up coming to the front lines. Seconds away from his natural, but his bio is being splattered. And the Cataphract is putting out a good amount of damage right now, but for the most part, I mean, Jimmy's Anseals are protecting a little bit. He has dealt with the Goliaths, and now it's just a question of, you know, what else do you got? Looks like he will be able to clear this position pretty easily. And there's that tank mode we were talking about. I love the use of the Autocrat. It will end up giving him a couple of those Phalanxes, but Raenarill has a couple of Cataphracts on standby. Look at the money for both players skyrocketing at this point. They're in a micro battle, a micro war. I love just walking right up to them. Yeah. Pretty wise for Jimmy to actually pull back with his Anseals there because the Phalanxes were pretty much as good as dead. Another thing he could have done is unsieged them and then tried to fight the Katas. They do have 0 armor pens, so they would be dealing 4 less damage per shot hit. You're talking about going from, you know, what is it? It's 4 times 10, right? So it would be 4 times 6, which is a pretty significant drop. Sundogs come out, but they are thwarted initially. Raenarill still has those Anseals. This feels like a very winnable position still from Jimmy's side. They both have a ridiculous amount of money, so they could put down more production structures. But right now, they definitely want to add more units, right? They've got the 1 guild hall. I guess the Autocrat has already been routed. He could throw one of them in the anchor at some point. He's got a Huracan in there, funnily enough. Looks like, what, we've got 3 Sundogs, 3 Wraiths, and we are producing more Sundogs on Jimmy's side. Nothing else from the star pad. Could put the Anseals in a preemptive position. Already have a commandment coming. Looks like that'll probably be for Seraph. We know that Raenarill enjoys a nuke. You know, the Morning Star. So we just need to see if the Anvil will come down. Slowly ranging down some of this bio, and it will splatter pretty easily. This is actually going to provoke the Durandals to step forward from Raenarill, but we know that there are more units where that came from. Where is the heavy stuff? He's got 1 Phalanx here, another one on the way. Feels like he needed to add another Fulcrum at some point. He's clearly got the resources to do so, right? He's not really harvesting gas very heavily, right? He's got 1 less than he needs on the sieve, or 2 really. I would say add the 3rd worker always, but I know that's a minority opinion. And then meanwhile down here, we've got, what? This one lost a Mason that was mining there. Yeah, okay, he's only got 2 over here. He does have good saturation on the sieves over in this position. He never started harvesting gas from his 4th, which has gone completely unnoticed by Raenarill. So when you're really this low on gas, look at your bases, see if there's something you're missing. And Jimmy has put the pieces together. He knows he needs to put that reservoir down. A couple of Wraiths parked over here. I don't know if Jimmy remembered them or not. He's going to be able to pick one of the Phalanxes with that. Very, very good play. But still needs something to deal with all of these walkers. And I don't know if the Sundogs are quite going to be it, but he's got a good number of them. It just feels like he needed to put some Anseals with that or something. Does he still have them? Yeah, he does, actually. A little bit of a missed opportunity. He's still going to cycle back and hit that Phalanx. Only 1 of them left, but the walkers are kind of irrespective of it. Cataphracts will eventually be brought down, but they'll take with them every single Sundog. And they should start to fall back at this point, but as the Madcaps and the Autocrats come out, that's going to be Cataphract very narrowly there for Jimmy, and then eventually it will be brought down. Oh no! Jimmy's run out of steam a little bit towards the end. He's going to lose all of his Ant Seals. That is catastrophic. Well, he can make them pretty fast again, but he's so low on gas, man. At least he's capped his reservoir. It feels like he's kind of backed into a corner here. He has so many minerals. He could be pumping Hurricanes and, of course, Vultures. Anything that you can get your hands on at this point will help you out there. Be building production structures out here in the 3rd and the 4th base. A couple of Sundogs are left, but the Ant Seals still protect that Phalanx. And he could have lifted that Ministry at any time to save it. He could have pulled the Masons at any time as well. A little bit of unforced errors here as he sends up a couple of more units. Tries to add a 3rd captaincy. It's dire straits for Jimmy, that's for sure. And it feels like Raenarill is just going to have a good time building his extra Ministry. I'm not quite sure where. There it is. Probably going to be earmarked for either the inner 12 or take a step forward and go all the way to the top right where there's another 2 gas base. Reservoir will burn down slowly. Cataphracts are finally going to be dealt with. They will take a Phalanx with them. That is unfortunate. Sundogs arrive to try to pick those Ant Seals, and that is the go signal. He's got to get out of town. More Phalanxes have arrived. They don't really have any anti-air with them. There's Katas and Goliaths on the way. Bit of a hodgepodge of a military here for Raenarill, but he is going to go ahead and try to mass up. Obviously, I've been mostly talking about things that Jimmy could do to improve in the last little bit because we've been focused on Jimmy's base since he's been the recipient of all of these attacks. But Raenarill definitely could have been taking the map a little bit faster if he's looking to improve on his own side. He is going to go for the Anvil. I don't remember if I didn't clock whether or not he made a Seraph. He might need to build one. Doesn't have a command, he has the commandment, but he doesn't have the covenant, so he can't make the Eidolon. Yeah, he has no way to actually paint the nuclear strike when he wants it. So this is a juicy target for it, though, that's for sure. It's capped Sieves. Maybe Jimmy will try to avert his gas-based woes for the time being. Still needs to retake his natural, but at this point, he's on even bases with his opponent, which is kind of weird to say. I mean, technically, I was going to say maybe this base is giving more gas, which is true, but that's actually not true because there's no reservoir here, and also the minerals are depleted, so definitely less value had there. Looks like this one will end up going to the 9 o'clock. Raenarill built the Ministry over here, so I thought he would fly out a little bit closer, but that's fine. That's a more defensive position anyway. A little bit less defensive versus somebody who you know is making a lot of Sundogs, but now we've got a lot of infantry coming. Okay, it's going to be the Seraph and the Facade together. We know that Raenarill is a fan of cloaking his Seraph, which, by the way, is probably going to have to be like a Futurist Federation variant of the Seraph or something, like, you know, a Seraph that has a proximity cloak, so that it can nuke just like the Eidolon. You don't need the Facade for it. Here comes the big Walker move. Captaincies have been put down, not as walls, but as production, but it sort of serves the same purpose. The Durandals run up on the stack of Madcaps. That is going to absolutely annihilate that Bioforce. He's got plenty more units where that came from, but he needs to actually get them over here. And right now, it seems like he's just going to try to unpack them a little bit on the slower side. More Phalanxes standing vigil. This is definitely going to keep Jimmy back into his natural, and that means that his 3rd base will likely be forfeit. Raenarill has no idea that there's more bases elsewhere. That's probably the main thing that's been keeping Jimmy in this game, and one of the main things that Raenarill could have used to bop him is if he just kind of scouted around over here and found them. The Sundogs are going to try to keep themselves going, but this is not the right target for the Sundogs. What you want to use the Sundogs for is actually bringing down these anti-air defenses over here, which are far less formidable and do far less, basically constrained damage on the same target, and certainly don't have any spread to them like the Cataphracts do. So definitely a good option there. Seraph is complete. I'm not quite sure where it went. Oh, there! Look, the Facade's floated over so that he can activate the ability, but turns out he's already found a potential strike for a missile. So this is going from bad to worse for Jimmy. He hasn't retaken his natural. Certainly no retake on the 3rd either. He's got plenty of minerals, but the gas income that he's going to lose from that position is so big. He does end up lifting this Ministry and flying it off into the corner. The Masons are offered up, I guess, because like he knows that Raenarill knows about them, but the Ministry was not exactly tracked. Yeah, Jimmy definitely in a rough spot here. He's Ant Seal trying to spot those Phalanxes, but he's just going to end up losing a lot of bio units just trying to move out. Looks like he will be able to break down that first Phalanx. There's 3 more where that came from, and the Walker army is also on the way. I am not convinced Jimmy can handle what is about to hit him. But he is going to go ahead and try his best. Now, his autocrats might help out versus the Durandals to a degree. But it looks like maybe either he only had one and it died, or... No, it looks like it is still here. Yep, there it is. Unfortunately, it doesn't really seem like it's set up for success. He only has the one. Needs a couple more, it feels like. Still a pretty reasonable trade for him, all things considered, but Raenarill still powers through, clears the Olympians, which are very, very good. Using Olympians versus Raenarill is kind of a dirty strategy, but so too is bug abuse. And the Facade is not supposed to be able to cloak field while it's lifted. So he's just, you know, he's just turning the screws at this point. He was clearly going to win anyway. At least that's what it's felt like for a very long time. I never make it entirely, I never like rule out potential option for something crazy to happen, like 12 Sundogs suddenly appearing, but it does feel like maybe it's going to be a little bit insufficient. And Irradiate does end up going down. Where did that Seraph go? Okay, I guess it was already killed. Yeah, it looks like it must have been picked. There's more Goliaths where that came from. At this point, Raenarill is kind of taking the piss with the floated Facade cloak. But hey, to be fair, I didn't patch it out on the release version. I did patch it out in pre-release, or maybe I forgot to, but I was planning to. Nonetheless, it's going to go ahead and pop that cloak field, allow his army to get even further up. He's living out his fantasy of having the mobile cloak tower. It will not be a thing for very long. And now we see Jimmy try to crank out a bunch of Hurricanes, but it is not enough. And he will be overwhelmed. The Sundog's going to come back in. The Entseals revealing them temporarily. The Facade needs to land to be, to do, well, actually it doesn't protect anymore. So never mind about that. All good. In the hood. The Sundogs die. The Hurricanes get on top of the army. This is actually a pretty big moment here for Jimmy. But this is just him trying to get some victories here at the very end. Okay, GG, he says, as he knows he has been defeated. Raenarill will claim the victory in a very prolonged TVT. Yeah, well, I don't know. I feel like I feel like overall, both of these players have a lot to look at for their spending, but I hope, yeah, he had the wounded thumb. This was a very winnable game for both sides, right? It wasn't unlosable by any means. They are close enough to each other that in skill that I think, like, you know, once Jimmy can rise to the occasion and start beating Raenarill, it'll show improvement. Just sort of like once Jimmy can start beating Grass, it'll show very nice improvement to the point where we know that, like, okay, Jimmy's ready for his Class 3. But you don't get Class 3 by losing, that's for sure. So at the same time, I guess maybe if you made it really, really close and then lost a hit 'em up, maybe then I'd say, okay, actually, yeah, you do get Class 3 by losing. Smiley face, says Jimmy. And that, I'm just going to speed through the rest, because I guess, me finger hurts when I press spacebar. Oh, he forgot he built a mantle. Good one. He's, you know, sometimes you're just in that fugue state. So that's a wrap on the match. Thanks for watching, guys. Tomorrow for more Cosmonarchy, you know where to go. My YouTube channel, subscribe, and I'll see you then. Peace.